Inverse functions part 2. Remember when we learned the word inverse, we related that to the word reverse. And so what reverses in inverse functions? Well, what reverses is the x and y coordinates. So in other words, in an effort to help you read the chart here, we've got the first row is values of x, and then the second and third rows give us values for f of x and g of x. So starting with f of x, if x happens to be -3, then f of x has a value of 9. So when x is -3, y is 9 on the graph of f of x. If x is -2, then y is equal to 2 on the graph of f of x. So the coordinates -3, 9 are the coordinates of one point on the graph of f of x, and -2, 2, another point on the graph of f of x. But if we relate that to the graph of f inverse, remember the things that reverse are the x and y coordinates, the domain and range. So the domain and range flip-flop. So if x is -3 on f of x, then y is -3 on f inverse. And so we have -3, 9 becomes 9, -3 on the graph of f inverse. -2, 2 becomes 2, -2 on the graph of f inverse. So let's go ahead and evaluate some of these expressions down here. We've got g of 3, so keeping in mind that anytime you see g, that's the function's name, and then whatever follows that, whatever's inside the parentheses, well, that's the value for x. That's the input. That's the domain value. And the g of 3 is the range value. So what is g of 3? Well, if x is equal to 3, we find 3 in the chart. And then g of 3, well, g of x is the last row, that's -5. So -5 is the value of g of 3. So in other words, 3, -5 is a point on the graph of g of x. F of 2, we find 2, we go down to the next row, which is -8, that's f of x. So f of x is -8 when x is equal to 2. That's how functions work. That's function notation. Well, now we see the next one, actually C, D, and E are asking questions about f inverse and the inverse functions here. So f inverse of 2, well, that's something that we want to make sure we understand. So let's do this here. F inverse of 2 is equal to something. So the easiest way, I think, to think about this is if f inverse of 2 equals something, that means that f of that something has to be equal to 2. So we just have to go backwards. It's like knowing the answer. It's like Jeopardy, knowing the answer, and you have to come up with the question. Well, here the question is 2, so the x value is 2, the y value is -8. Well, here we're trying to find the x coordinate in f of x that maps to, or that provides us, or that implies that we have a 2 as a y coordinate. So what's the x coordinate when the y coordinate is 2? Well, the y coordinate is the f of x. That's the y. So the y coordinate is 2. We just have to find a 2 in here, and we found a 2. So that means that f of -2 happens to be 2. So let me use a different color here. So if f of -2 is 2, that means that f inverse of 2 happens to be -2. So -2 is the value of f inverse of 2. I know I said a lot there, but I think, again, what you want to do is, we'll do this another one here for D. You want to think about g inverse of 3 is equal to some number. So the main idea here is g of some number has to be equal to 3. So the y coordinate on g is 3. What's the x coordinate on g? Well, we find g, and we find the y coordinate of 3 right here. That's the y coordinate. And what's the x coordinate? Well, that's -3. So if g of -3 is 3, that means that g inverse of 3 is -3. That's all you have to do. Find the x coordinate for g that gives you a 3 as the y coordinate, and therefore you found the g inverse of 3, which would be, again, -3. As long as I'm putting red boxes around those two numbers, I might as well put red boxes around these two. And then finally we have f inverse of f of 2. So this one is called a composite function, and if f and f inverse are indeed inverse functions, then the 2 is going to be the answer. But let's see how we get that. So when we have multiple sets of parentheses, which we have here, we want to work from the inside out. We want to find f of 2. Well, we already found f of 2. F of 2 is negative 8. So what we're really finding, what we're going to do is we're going to substitute negative 8 for f of 2, and then we're going to find f of negative 8. Well, f of negative 8 is something, where f of that something is negative 8. Well, we already found that something. We found that something is 2. So therefore, since f of 2 is negative 8, f inverse of negative 8 happens to be 2. And so there's our answer. So 2 is the value of f inverse of f of 2. And that's how inverse functions work anyway. F inverse of f of anything is that anything. And we'll pick up example 2 in the next video.